Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we finished up Solute 3, and I was just doing a little bit of research here on the next few Solutes that are in the list. 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, these are all very similar to what we've done on Solutes 1 and 3. So we're probably going to end up skipping this. The primary changing is just minor configurations. More Soyuz visited it. I mean, we've done a lot of this recently. So I think we're pretty much going to move on. This is basically the same as Solute 3 at this point. And this one is basically the same as Solute 4. It's very repetitive. So I think we're going to be moving on from this. This is slightly different here, but... And, I mean, I'm sure they all had very, very important internal differences and things like that. As far as KSP goes, they're going to be very similar. So we're going to move directly on to the Mir space station. This bad boy. Now, this looks like a bit of a mess from this photo, and that's because it is. Luckily, we've got this breakdown of it, which is very nice. So that will be very convenient for us. We'll be able to use this to get ourselves some decent things happening here. We can see a Soyuz docking module over here. This is another docking module down here. I'm not sure which module the space shuttle ended up docking to, because yes, the space shuttle docked to this. We'll get there. And we've also got the Progress unmanned supply ship over here, and we should probably make one of those as well. But first off, we're going to be wanting to launch this core module here. So we can see that it goes up to this like central point here, and we'll definitely get ourselves a better view of the core module here. So if we go back to the Mir space station here and go down, we can see components of Mir, and we've got the core module here. So we can see this diagram showing us what the core module ends up looking like, and that looks pretty super easy. So we're going to definitely be making ourselves one of these, or something kind of close to it anyway. So let's hop into the VAB and let's get designing. So the core module here, well, we can definitely see that there's kind of a conical portion, but the core module to me... Well, let's start with that conical portion. So we might replace this, but we're going to start with this as our core module for right now. Then I want to go into the structural tab here. We could certainly go for something like a modular girder hub. That gives us approximately the shape that we're looking for, but I would actually kind of prefer that's a micro node there. I would kind of prefer for this to be filled in. Is there any variance of this? No. Okay. That's mildly awkward, but I guess it's okay. Yeah, I would prefer this to be circular. I thought that there was one. Hang on. Let's do a quick look through of all of the parts. I thought that there was one of those parts in KSP. I might be thinking of a modded part, though. That is very possible. I'm just doing a quick glance through and seeing if I see it. If I don't, you'll probably be very upset at me because I probably just missed it. But if worst case comes to worst case, that's not how that phrase goes, but if worst comes to worst, then we'll definitely just stick with what we've got here. And yeah, that seems okay. So these up here are going to end up being docking ports. What size of docking port do we want? Regular docking ports are maybe a bit on the large side for this, but I kind of like it, actually. That kind of fills in this girder portion and makes it look a little bit more solid. So I feel like that kind of works. So this ends up being mounted kind of like this. Right? And then I want to reroute this so that this is the root part. And then we can ditch this Mark 1 command pod. We can decide whether we want this to be a Mark 1 or something else entirely here in a moment. We could end up going for like a Mark 2. I'm just looking here at the proportions, and actually a Mark 2 I think works reasonably well. I would like to make this be white colored, I guess. That'll be fine. So that's all okay. Now we have a portion here that goes basically straight down. So we can have this be a fuel tank, but I'm actually not going to do that. I'm going to have one section of this being a reaction wheel. So a medium reaction wheel assembly would be good. And we'll just call this the Mir Core Module. We're going to have to launch and assemble a bunch of modules, right? So that's fine. We'll have to see how the launch vehicle for this ended up looking, if that information is available. You never can tell with these Soviet designs. But we're going to put on a battery bank here as well. Then we're going to need a fair amount more distance here. So we could go with something like a fuel tank. Are we in FL size? Yeah, obviously this is too much. So we would end up going for like one of these bad boys here. Something kind of like this. And then we would go for, I'm thinking maybe like Gigantors. So a pair of Gigantors would go on like this, and it would end up looking like that. So the idea here is that, and this is not exactly the right angle, right? But that would be basically the upper half of this, right? So we're down to about this line right here, in theory. So that would be the idea there. Then we're going to need to expand this out to a slightly wider size. So we'll go for an adapter. And this is going to be, what, an FL like this? That's about right, actually. So then this is going to be 2.5 meter, right? So we would end up looking at a small fuel tank here, just based on what I'm looking at there. So like an X-16, something along the lines of this. Then I'm going to put in a service bay here, just because it looks to me like that's a service bay. Let's have it be rotated like so that it opens away from the solar panels, like that. And then this would be basically our core module. So looking at our actual module reference diagram here, that's what we've got right now. We definitely are going to need this guy up here, which I'm going to interpret as the communications array. So let's put that in. No problem whatsoever. We'll just slap a high gain antenna in, and I'm going to do that over here. This is not the way I want this to be rotating. There we go. That's the way I want it to rotate. So something along the lines of that. And then my question is, do we have like attachment ports down here? We must. Because looking at this diagram, this definitely attaches over here, and we can see that this scales down to attach there. Okay. There's also a, like, extendable antenna over here. We might want to include that as well. Okay. So, to that end, we would grab ourselves a Clampatron docking port, and we just slap that guy right there. Maybe we'd even use the large docking port for this. Let's see here. Coupling. Do we have access to it yet? We don't. Okay. So this will do. This will absolutely do. So we want to retract our solar panels for right now. And this is basically the core module that we're going to lift. I do want to put some engines onto here, of course. So we're just going to probably use twitches as we have been. That will be fine. We'll put quad twitches on here. My question is, do these have access to the fuel? And they do. So that seems fine. Let's move this up so that there's very little danger of those being impacted with a docking event. Something like that. I don't like the door situation here. Let's move these up to here instead. Something like that. Yeah, that'll do. And then an extendable antenna over here. So something like the Communitron 16. We'll put that like over on this side. We don't need this quad coupled. Hang on. We'll put that over on this side, and we'll extend that on out. Fantastic. What are we going to put inside of the service bay? We could definitely put in our science experiments here. No doubt about that. We could also put in a mech jeb, which I think would not be a bad idea. In fact, just generally. Let's see, we have a reaction wheel here and here, of course. So both of those have reaction wheels. My question is, what do we need in here? A autopilot sort of solution would actually be interesting. So like a Probodobodyne Octo 2 going there could definitely be interesting so that this can auto-orient itself. I think that's a reasonable course of action. What else would we want in here? Well, science experiments would probably eventually be good. We can put a magnetometer boom out over here. I don't know that we're actually going to get any science out of this, although a surface scanning module is maybe an interesting thing to bring along. We're not going to bring an infrared telescope on this module, maybe on a future module, but we can certainly grab our mystery goo containment unit. We can put in a KER. There we go. We can put that right there. And we could also, in theory, put on a mech jeb, which goes under pods, I think? No, hang on. It's under... What is it under? Hang on. Let's do it this way. Mech jeb. There we go. That'll do. So we'll slap a mech jeb in here just to be on the safe side. What else would we want in here? Well, we definitely want additional science experiments. So an atmospheric fluid spectrovariometer can go here. Not that we're going to get much for data from that. We can put in a too-hot thermometer over here. We can put in a seismic accelerometer. Again, we're not going to get much data out of that one. And what else do we have? Barometer? I don't think we have a press map barometer in here. Where is that? Here it is. Okay, so that would go, say, over here. And we could call that good for now, for our service bay. We've got battery power. We've got power generation. It should be reasonably fine. So this would be the overall Mir core module. This is, of course, not the overall station module. The real question now is, with the core module, what was this lifted on? Let's see here. So the core module, it did have a docking port at the rear of the spacecraft, allowing 5 additional modules. So 5 additional modules. That's interesting, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do they not have one at the top of the module? It sure looks to me, based on the Mir diagram. Okay, yeah, because if we look at this, it sure looks to me like we've got... Well, this isn't a connection this way, is it? But we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I think our interpretation of this is correct. Also, it looks like there's an extendable solar panel here that wasn't covered in that diagram. Yeah, the dorsal solar array. Okay, fantastic. So we'll definitely grab one of those. So an extendable solar array here then. And that would need to be ideally a kind of long one. Kind of long and wide. Maybe we'd go with like one of these guys. Sure. It's not perfect, but something along those lines would do. Okay. I'm not finding anything on here about how it was lifted. That might be kind of lost to time. That is definitely a thing that happened with these Soviet Union flights back in that time period. What was Zvezda lifted by then? I'm sure that's probably public knowledge. That was aboard a Proton. Okay, so aboard a Proton launch vehicle, that sounds absolutely fine. So we could then, I want to save and continue. We want to append in a Proton. We do have a Proton rocket in here somewhere, but I don't think I called it Proton. We would basically lift this with the same thing that lifted Salyut 3, I think, broadly. So that would be this guy, right? So we would then discard... Well, not like this. Hang on. We would want to reroute this. So reroute this part down to, say, this docking port. Then we would ditch everything up top. And I don't want to save this, actually. I want to merge in the Mir core module now. So that is this guy. I want to merge this. And we would place that here for now. And that's kind of awkward for us, no doubt about that. But I want to now reroute this section a bit. I want to attach it on the bottom, right? So we need to make sure that this part is rooted here. So I want to reroute this, and I want to have this be rooted here. Okay, and then we flip it upside down. We grab this, we flip this upside down, and then we attach this in here, like this. So this is not actually having a second docking port here, noted. We're just going to duplicate that and put it there. There we go. And obviously our fairing needs to be redone, so we'll delete this fairing for now. But this would be the overall way that we would get this thing into orbit. Would be something like this. And this is, of course, going to be renamed the Mir Core Module, and we are going to, yes, overwrite that. That is absolutely fine. We're going to be launching this on a Proton rocket. What is our thrust to weight? 1.36. Okay. These are skippers. I'm going to replace this center skipper with a mainsail, and we'll see what that puts us at. So let's grab engines. Engines, and we, of course, want a mainsail going here in the center. I want this to be a compact variant of the mainsail. So something like that, and then we would put this guy right here, 1.62. That is much better. Okay, so this will be much better for lifting. This thing does launch into the same 51.6 degree orbit, so the inclination is going to be the same. We'll have to rebuild our fairing here, and this is going to need to be a bit wider of a fairing. Definitely. So we'll bring this guy up a bit. It does not want to be at this width. Okay. Presumably it is going to want to be at like this width. Yes, that is a lot better. Okay. So a fairing kind of like this should do. I do want to make sure that we've got some strutting here. Struts will be pretty important. We're going to have a huge amount of bending here otherwise, which we would definitely prefer not to have. Okay, I guess that'll do. And otherwise, do we think we need any additional bending? Or rather, any additional strut work? Let's do a real quick bending test. This is going to be reverted. This is a simulated launch. I also don't really like the directionality of those fuel tanks on the outer proton shell. Okay, we'll think about changing that in a bit. For the moment, I want to check to make sure that we're not going to have a huge bending issue. So the way that we're going to do this is we're just going to lift straight off the pad, and this is going to be the KSC pad. We're going to actually launch this from Woomerang, most likely. But let's just launch this straight off of the pad. And we don't care what direction this is going to end up going. We're just going to take this over to horizontal velocity up. And we just want to hard turn here. Okay, let's turn. We're watching for bending. I don't see any at this time. And I don't think it's going to get much, much more extreme than that turn. Okay. I mean, we're going to start going down here very soon. This is obviously not a good trajectory to be going, but that's definitely interesting. Let's take it over to prograde right now. Or actually, let's just take it to up. And let's see how this handles it. We're going to have a lot of aerodynamic effects fighting us. Okay, we can't turn up at this point because of aerodynamics. But this is fine. We learned what we needed to know. So let's revert that right on back to vehicle assembly. We know that our thrust to weight is pretty decent. We know that we're not having a huge amount of bending. The one thing I want to visit is that this line isn't straight. Okay, so we're going to detach that. What do we have inside here? Okay. So I want to rotate this, and we're going to bring this around to, what is this, 6 symmetry? Yes. And this line is still not straight. We're going to have to rotate these like that. Okay, there we go. Now we'll attach on these skippers, and then we'll do strut connectors from here, and then strut connectors internally as well. So the strut connectors will go from here to here. That'll do. Okay, so I think we're ready to lift the Mir Core module at this point. This is probably wildly overbuilt on the Proton rocket, but this is also a relatively heavy space station. We did not include any scientific labs in the core module. Those will likely be included later. And I'm using fuel tanks here, but these are really more like structural living modules. So that's going to be mildly awkward for the Kerbonauts. I hope they know how to swim and that they didn't, like, they're not pyromaniacs, right? That'd be problematic for us if they were pyromaniacs. Let's save this and, oh, I put this out on the KSC. You know what? It probably doesn't really matter whether we launch from Woomerang or KSC. Well, for the first launch, it kind of does, but for every launch after that, our inclination is established. So I think that I'm going to do it. I'm going to take this over to Woomerang. So let's revert this back to vehicle assembly. Let's take this to Woomerang, and let's just launch it from there. We know we're aiming for 51.6 inclination. And timing doesn't really matter here, so we're going to take this over to Woomerang, and let's launch it there. Phenomenal. So we're going to head straight up for a while, and then we're going to head for around that 51.6 degree inclination. We'll need to definitely work on changing the inclination somewhat, but this will be okay. For our first launch, it doesn't really matter. Well, for any of them. We're going to have sufficient fuel to get to this station pretty much any way we slice it. How many overall modules are on this thing anyway? How long is this going to take? We've got 1, 2, 3-ish, 4, 5-ish modules. Okay, that's not so bad. That's not so bad. We're precariously located on the pad here, but let's throttle up. SAS on. Actually, let's use Smart ASS. Let's see how that goes. And off we go. Excellent. We could grab this atmospheric analysis. We're probably not going to be able to recover it, but oh, we're stoked. Yeah, that would make sense. Okay, so up we go. We are, of course, going to be... Oh, this is where our fuel lines run. Okay, noted. That's absolutely fine. We are, of course, going to be running this for a while. We're going to want to make our way over to this prograde marker. So that's going to be our first stop here. We're going to just lift up here until we're going at an apoapsis height of about 20 kilometers. Then we're just going to hop over to the prograde marker. Actually, we could probably hop over to the prograde marker about now. We know that this thing is relatively steady, right? So this will be relatively fine, but we do want to be heading down on a heading of about 67 here. So we're just trying to bring this on down a little bit. Cool. Right about here. And we're just going to park here for the time being. Excellent. We want the prograde marker to be pulled down this direction. But we want to be basically going the direction of the air resistance when we have our side boosters ejected, right? So here in about 20 seconds there. And I should probably check what our target apoapsis here is. Let me just see here. Mir, what is your target apoapsis? Mir's target apoapsis is 374 kilometers. Okay, noted. So we're going to hop over into maneuver mode rather, and keep an eye on this inclination. Again, 51.6 is our target there. We can see our apoapsis height is quite high at this point. We're going to go over to horizontal velocity up, but actually, kill rot. Okay, that could have been bad, but we're good. We're going to, of course, cut the gimbal on this down to 10%. Horizontal velocity up, please. Okay, with this gimbal being where it's at, we're having a bit of a hard time steering it, but we're getting there. Okay, it's under control. We shouldn't have headed over to the horizon until after we ejected the side boosters. That was a mistake there, but luckily it didn't end up being a problem. We can ditch our fairing now, and we will be delighted to do so. Keeping an eye on this inclination, it should still be slightly improving. And we're going to be out of the atmosphere here very shortly. So that all looks good. We've still got about 20 seconds of burn time left in this stage here. We are chewing through that fuel very quickly, which isn't shocking. Okay, we're now in space. Let's go to kill rot. Let's just bring this down a little bit here, because I want this inclination to be coming up a bit more. Cool. So we're holding here at about 67 degrees. We do need to move into this stage. And we should be safe to have that gimbaling at full gimbal. In theory. Okay. So I'm just pulling this heading down a bit. I'm watching this inclination marker. Is it going up or down right now? Up. Okay, perfect. We're going to sit here at the 45-degree heading for the moment, because we want this inclination marker to go quite a lot up. Again, our apoapsis target here is 374 kilometers. So we're going to be burning here for a while. That's okay. We're seeing our time to apoapsis is holding steady, so this is looking... Actually, it is coming down slightly. So this is actually looking quite good. I do want to be at the horizon. And really, we could be burning almost more this direction, right? Burning almost more north. So 49.9... We're angling for 51.6 is our target inclination here. So I'm just going to be burning here for the moment. We need to change our inclination a little bit. We launched into a slightly wrong inclination, but that seems fine. We still need to change this by about 1.5 degrees. So that's fine for now. It's not changing quite as much as I would like. Let's burn right here on the marker. 50.5. Cool. We definitely see time to apoapsis is on its way down, but we are increasing... Actually, we're decreasing our horizontal speed. Noted. That's kind of awkward. So let's head up here and see if that's increasing our horizontal speed a little bit. We do only need to change this a little bit at this point. So actually, let's just park here and get the inclination change done. We've still got about 2 minutes here, so we've got lots of time. 51 degrees, we're angling for 51.6, but I'm going to move this at 51.5. So we're at 51.2. 0.3. That's definitely moving pretty slowly. 51.4, and we're going to move back at 51.5. Okay, H velocity up. And 51.6. Perfect on that timing. I like it. So now our apoapsis height is going back up. Time to apoapsis is still decreasing here, but this should be okay. We do need to build up a decent amount of horizontal speed, so this burn is going to be a pretty lengthy one, but we should remain on the 51.6 degree inclination right now. That looks pretty solid. Indeed. And we can see the time to apoapsis is not going down very fast right now. It's going down significantly slower than 1 second per second. So we're okay here. We are not going to have significant issues. We need to bring our apoapsis height up pretty significantly, but that is expected. Again, just to reiterate, 374, and our periapsis is 354. That's our target periapsis. Okay. Excellent. Let's get that horizontal speed going. So yeah, 51.6 inclination is exactly what we're angling for. And at this point, we could definitely enter a physics warp, as we do need a fair amount of horizontal speed. So let's physics warp here, and we're seeing time to apoapsis starting to go up now. Phenomenal, as expected. And we are entering orbit now. We're in official orbit. Periapsis and apoapsis are changing around. Let's come out of physics warp. Still on 51.6 degree inclination. Looks solid. And we're angling for 374. Cool. So that's 320, 330, 340, 350, 360, and 370. Let's just get this a little bit slower here. 372, 373, and 374. Perfect. So that'll do. We've still got 600 meters per second here, and this module here still has about 5,000 meters per second. That's a lot. But we're going to have to ditch this eventually. We may keep this around temporarily and do these here and then move the fuel and then ditch this module. That's probably what we're going to end up doing, actually. So for now, that would work fine. We do need to bring our periapsis up. So we're currently at the periapsis. So at the apoapsis, let's bring this right on up to 354. That's a little too high. Cool. Somewhere right around here. That'll do. That looks perfect. Let's head on over to the node. We should probably extend our solar panels. That would help. I just realized that we don't actually have any crew in this. I'm actually mildly surprised about that. I guess it makes sense, though, based on how we constructed it. We're not supposed to have crew in this, to be clear. So we're glad that there isn't any crew in this Mark II command pod. So that'll be great. Let's align to the node here. So this is only going to be 100 meters per second. Let's actually ditch this right now and not pollute our final orbit with this. So we're going to decouple this guy, and we are going to activate this engine. Okay, so we're going to burn this fuel. This fuel will get recycled back into the station. We're not going to ditch all of it. So we end up losing like 600 meters per second here. That's fine. Again, I just wanted to not pollute this original orbit. So let's warp on forward. And we've got ourselves a core module in an orbit, but it's not in our target orbit just yet. So let's get this 100 meters per second or so. 0.67 on the thrust to weight. Okay, sounds good. 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and let's get there. 5, well, now 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. Okay. And onward we go. 3, 2, 1, 0. We're basically on the point right now. There we go. How are we doing? Still 51.6 degree inclination. 373, almost 374. 354, 353, almost 354. I'm going to call this within the margin of error. That'll be good enough. So that'll be absolutely fine. We're going to, of course, kill rot here, and it's time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. And next episode, we're going to work on bringing up some of the other modules. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12 UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.